Okay, so I guess can someone please make a motion to have Treasurer Slavens be the clerk for tonight and take a roll call?
I move that Treasurer Slavens be appointed as temporary clerk for tonight. And take the roll call.
Support.
Oh, here comes the clerk.
Whoop.
Quickly vote.
Okay,
So we
I
can
withdraw my motion.
withdraw your
I
motion.
withdraw my
Okay,
support.
Clerk Segers, can you please take roll call?
Orninski,
Good evening.
Foster,
Good evening.
Ganguly,
Good evening.
Graham Hudak.
Good evening.
Let the record reflect that Clerk Segrist strolled in promptly at 6 p.m. Treasurer Slavens
Good evening.
and Snyderman.
I'm present. Hello.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda with inclusion of a statement and a vote that I emailed to the team?
I move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Treasurer Slavens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Can we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the first item on the agenda, we're just going to take a vote on something that we discussed today. The board had passed something, I'm just going to read it out loud, but I did send it to everyone a few minutes ago. So pursuant to a request by the township clerk today, we discussed closing the township to the public on Election Day, November 8th, except for essential township services. This closure is pursuant to the election operations policy adopted by the Board of Trustees at the September 13th, 2022 board meeting. This policy was adopted in order to staff the election efficiently and keep the township work moving forward. We will ask employees in the various departments to work various aspects of the election administration, while other employees will stay in their department working their normal day. Each director will submit to me by tomorrow, October 19th, a list of essential functions which will continue on Election Day and which will not, making some employees eligible to work the election. Some employees may also work overtime as the polls close after the normal workday has ended. I am asking the board to approve the clerk's request for closure on Election Day. Does anyone have any questions about this? Well, Michael's here. No? Okay.
Madam Supervisor, I move that the board approve my request, ironically enough, that we close the township to the public on Election Day and to allow the clerk to have the authority to close to the public on the Wednesday, the day after the election.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Treasurer Slavens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. First thing on our study session agenda is the GLWA contract update, so I will pass it over to Jade Smith.
Thank you, Supervisor. So every 4 years, communities across the region negotiate a contract with GLWA in regards to water consumption. And this year, they're doing all the communities in 1 year. So our contract is up. I wanted to present this to you tonight, and I have Susan Nepper here with OHM, who's been working with us in regards to our water system for quite a few years. She's going to go through the highlights of the contract, and then after tonight, we will bring the actual contract before the board at a future board meeting, probably the meeting in November, as we have until only December 13th to get this ratified and get it back to GLWA for them to consider. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Susan, who's going to walk us through the presentation that was sent out.
Hi, I'm Susan. All right, as Jade mentioned, GLWA, Great Lakes Water Authority, they are currently going through their contract alignment process where every 85 wholesale customers are renegotiating with them. And so this is not unique. It's everyone who buys water from GLWA is going through this process right now. And so the two big things you look at during these contracting negotiations are your demand values. And these are the largest drivers of what your potential charges will be now and into the next 4 years. And so what they look at is your max day contract rate and your peak hour contract rate. And currently, the township's max day contract rate is 22.5 MGD, and they have a peak hour contract rate of 23.5 MGD. Next slide. I'll give you a little description on what that means because I'm just like demand and all that. So your max day contract, or max day, means your maximum average daily usage that the township takes from GLWA throughout the summer. And so GLWA looks at summer months, June 1st through August 31st, and they see how much each day is the township using, and then whatever the highest is then that max day value. And then similarly with peak hour, they look at the average hourly usage throughout the summer. So what was your highest average hourly from that summer? And whichever number that is, that's your peak hour value. So that's really what those numbers mean. And they really are a large driver to your contract rates. So a little history. The township, as I'm sure you all know, built a large storage tank in 2017. And the reason for this was because of the savings that could be realized with GLWA, with how their current charge methodology is established. So when that took effect, the township renegotiated from a 36 MGD peak hour down to a 23.5, which is your current. And so you drop that peak hour usage a lot because of the storage tank. That storage tank allows the township to supplement demands that don't come from GLWA. And then in 2018, GLWA started this contract alignment process where Jade mentioned is a 4-year schedule. That's why we're doing it now in 2022. In 2018, GLWA started this process, and this is actually the year GLWA first started realizing the savings from their storage tank. And now we're in 2022 doing the second year of their contract alignment process. So a little history on the storage tank. In 2017, OHM and Canton Township partnered OHM helped design the storage tank and oversee the construction activities, and they helped build the 2.5 million gallon storage tank and the booster station. And this allowed the township to negotiate a lower peak hour, as I mentioned, going down from 36 MGD to 23.5. And so what this slide is really showing is that estimated annual savings the township has seen from the GLWA charge perspective since implementing that storage tank. And so over the last 5 years, you guys have realized a savings of just about $16 million with implementing that. So how GLWA picks and allows you to set your minimum allowable contract rates is they look at that history of what has that max day been and what has your peak hour been from the last 6 years. And so they looked at the last 6 years of data for Canton from 2016 to 2021, and they identified this is your highest max day value, and the lowest the township can negotiate to is doing 10% above that highest, because they want to add a buffer in there so that the township doesn't exceed their contract rates, and so that, GLWA is aligning the contract rates equally between member partners as well by doing that buffer for each member partner. Same thing with peak hour, they do that 10% buffer, but storage customers are unique because they do have the opportunity to reduce that peak hour with the storage. And so really what GLWA is looking for there is adding a buffer on top of your controls. And those controls are what allow you to knock that peak hour rate of the 36 MGD it used to be down to the 23.5 it currently is. So we reviewed the 2016 to 2021 data with GLWA, and we identified that July 6, 2020 was Canton's highest observed max day from the last 6 years. And when you do a 10% buffer on that, the lowest Canton was allowed to negotiate to was 19.6 MGD with GLWA. And just for a reminder, your current contract rate is 22.5 MGD. Peak hour data, this is kind of unique because you are a storage customer, so you don't necessarily need to review each peak hour data, but GLWA wants to make sure your controls are in place to make sure you can reach that peak hour contract rate you have established with them. And so Canton Township right now, their current peak hour is 23.5, and it seems to still be appropriate based on the history we've seen over the last 6 years. So you can see on July 6, 2020, we approached that peak hour contract rate. We didn't exceed it, but the township did approach it, and so it's just showing the township is effectively operating to that peak hour rate, but there's not too much room to wiggle down at this time. So it was proposed that the existing max day of 22.5 be reduced down to 20 MGD and keeping the peak hour rate the same, which is an estimated savings of about $300,000 right now. And just to add a note, this is with all else being equal, so a lot of member partners, like we mentioned, there's 85, are currently renegotiating their contract rates, and so their percentage of that pie will change, and so that $300,000 is as if nothing else changed in just Canton, but there are people renegotiating right now. So this is the estimated savings we have today from GLWA. With that being said, those are the numbers that really get looked at with the Great Lakes Water Authority. There is a upcoming water master plan the township is going to have to do. It's an Eagle Estate mandated project. They have communities do them every 5 years. Canton's last one was in 2018, so likely they're going to start requesting that from the township in 2023, 2024 time. The township's currently undergoing Joy Road water main design and construction that's going to loop that area up on Joy Road. And they're also looking at removing some of the pressure reducing valves in the system that aren't really they're not as needed anymore, and so it's really going to optimize the flows and water quality in your system when you get rid of those. And so those are all the upcoming water projects. Any questions?
So I know that's a lot to cover in a very short time, because when you see the contract is pretty lengthy in comparison to what we just went over, but this is the meat and potatoes of it. And I believe a couple of years ago, we went through the upcoming water projects, and those were approved by the board. And when those projects are done, we'll actually see additional savings in our system from our usage. And I don't know, Susan, if you want to touch on that, if we can reopen this contract after we make those improvements with GLWA?
Yeah, so there are some improvements, one being related to the PRV removals. Once the township does look at optimizing their system and updating their controls even further, there is opportunity to reduce that peak hour contract rate that's at 23.5 right now, even lower, maybe by an MGD or two. And the township just has to show that they are able to do this to GLWA over the duration of one summer. And so once the township does implement these changes, they can actually do an out-of-contract reopener, so like outside of that 4-year timeline, and renegotiate even a lower value and have additional savings with that.
Is it a zero-sum game for the 85 communities? In other words, do some communities have to end up paying more if we pay less?
Yeah, so like your demand, the max day peak hour, are the largest charges, and so really they help split up that percent of the pie. So GLWA's pie is a set number for their revenue requirements, and then these numbers, which is in line with AWWA, American Water Works Association's standards for demand setting and contract setting. Using demand numbers are pretty standard, but it does determine how that pie is split. And so yes, if you go smaller, someone else has to do a little bit bigger.
Okay, so this must mean that we've actually really done a good job in terms of saving water, because we're actually doing better than the average town, I guess, if our cost is going down.
Yes, yep. You're using water at the right time because you're putting it into your storage tank, and so when you need it, it's coming from that and not from GLWA.
Thanks.
Other communities had looked at putting storage tanks and also around us. Is that moving forward, and will that affect us also?
So if a community does decide to build a storage tank, it will affect your percent of the pie, because if they negotiate smaller, it could make that piece of what you owe larger, just because their percent is changing. But I know communities are investigating it. I can't really say if they've actually gone into the full design. I know Northville Township is in a design of doing I call it a baby tank, because it's pretty tiny what they want to knock it down, but it's not a huge number compared to Canton's demand values.
Westland and Livonia were looking at it at some point also.
Yeah, they're looking at it. They haven't actually gone into the full-blown thing. I know Westland's not really Livonia is looking at it on a preliminary basis.
And you might not know this, I don't know, I know it's been spoken about previously with Highland Park rates. So those rates are not included. I know you guys are kind of escrowing those. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Great Lakes Water Authority, there's been a lot of litigation and stuff with Highland Park right now, but right now it's supposed to not be reflected on the water charges, the debt that they owe. I know that was a big thing with communities.
And they're but their water service is continuing. Yep.
Is our tank sufficient? Is it optimized?
Yeah, your tank is the right size for your east side demand. If you wanted, the lowest GLWA would allow a community to negotiate down to is their max day contract rate. So the lowest you could actually go and drop that peak hour is to the 20 MGD, but you'd have to make sure your tank can do that. Right now, sometimes on the west side, your hourly usage goes up to like 21 MGD. So technically, if you really wanted to be a max day customer, which we'd have to do the cost benefit analysis to knock it down in MGD and actually build a storage tank to do all of that, you would have to do a baby tank like Northville on the west side of the township. But at this time, it would only be for like an MGD or a half MGD to do that. And the savings probably wouldn't be, we'd have to do that analysis to really understand what the savings versus what that construction would look like.
It would have to be on the west side, or it couldn't be where the other tank is?
It would have to be on the west side.
And that's something that we've talked about in the past, and I think we talked about it at a board meeting as well, that waiting to see what happens on the west side of the township too when we get built out, and then see what kind of demand that's requiring, to then go back and do the study and the analysis to see what size tank should be constructed, or if one should be constructed at all. But I just want to go back to this slide because I think this actually paints a really good picture. You can see the savings that we have seen since the implementation of the tank in 2018. And that peak hour rate was 36, and now it's down to 23. So the tank has more than paid for itself, and we're seeing those benefits.
Is the bond fully paid off now?
It is. I believe this year was the last year. So I don't know if it's actually been written here yet, but it's this year was the last year.
Yeah, so it's very impressive.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So I hope to have that, like I said, I think we just have one meeting in November, so it'll be on the November 22nd meeting for the actual contract. It's being reviewed right now by Foster Swift from a legal perspective, so once he gets back with me on that, then we'll be good to go.
All right, thank you. Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Yeah, of course.
So the next item is the electrical vehicle study review.
Thank you.
You want us to go ahead? Okay. You can sit up there, yeah. So I think about a year ago, we applied for a planning grant for the for an EV infrastructure plan. And Beheshta is here from SEMCOG, who heads up their EV toolkit and is a great resource for SEMCOG, or for EVs, and works out of SEMCOG. So thanks for being here. And then John Salinas worked very hard on this, along with Mannequin Smith. We have Roger Adet and Tiffany Hamill here as well. So they're going to actually walk us through the next slides. I do believe that the study got sent to the board. So it's pretty lengthy. There's a lot of information in there. Hopefully you didn't fall asleep during it when you read it, but we're going to kind of do a high-level overview of the high-level overview of what is in that study, and then have some discussion about next steps from a township perspective after that. So I'll turn it over to Roger and Tiffany.
Before we get going, I'm Roger Godwin, obviously with Manikin Smith. I'm the Strategic Development Director. In a prior life, sorry, get a mic. In a prior life, I spent 35 years with Ford Motor Company at Ford Land as a director there. Retired in 2018 and retired for a little while, then came back and working for Manikin Smith. So why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Jenny Hamel. I am the sustainability coordinator at Manikin Smith, and my background is in environmental sustainability. And this is a project that we were really excited to work on.
Jenny spent a lot of time on this and did a great job. And to your point, Jade, it was more of a planning exercise. It was not a true engineering outcome. And I think what we were kind of charged to do is certainly work with you guys on potential locations within the city, explore with Peter Basso, who is an electrical engineering group that works currently with you guys, just to kind of take a quick snapshot look at current capacity in a number of different locations to be able to identify whether or not there is power there to put in type 2 chargers. And so I think that was part of the report as well. And I think a lot of what we tried to concentrate on is what's currently happening in the industry, which is changing faster than everything else in the world. And to understand what some of the communities in this area are doing and try to do a comparison of that to get Canton Township set up to kind of take the next step and decide how do you want to go ahead and potentially contract for EV chargers? Do you want to own them yourselves? Do you want to contract with somebody on a turnkey deal? And I think ultimately it was a very lengthy document because you put a lot of time and effort into gathering a lot of information. So I think what we'll do is let Jenny run through just a series of slides and then try to answer any questions that you guys might have after that.
So hopefully this will help summarize that big document so you don't have to read it. I thought it might be good to go over some background information just because it's kind of, there's a lot to it. So EVSEs is the technical term for charging stations. It stands for Electrical Vehicle Supply Equipment. RPH is range per hour. That's kind of the equivalent to an ICE's miles per gallon. And then DCFC is a direct current fast charger, just so we get the alphabet soup out of the way. Mm-hmm. A level 1 charging station is going to give about 3 to 5 RPH. That's gives you about 5 miles per charging hour. That's what that means. You won't find these in public too often. They'll mostly be found in people's private homes because they do take a long time to charge. Level 2 charging stations is what this planning study really focused on. You'll get 12 to 25 RPH, and they'll be located mostly in businesses and retail centers. And then level 3 or DCFCs or fast chargers will get you a full battery in about 60 to 90 minutes and are usually located along corridors. They're kind of more the equivalent to a gas station for a quicker fill up than the other options. So looking forward into 2030, EVs are expected to be around 25 to 30% of all sales. In Q2 of 2022, we're actually at about 12.9% of the US market. And the big three has already committed to 40 to 50% of all of their sales being electric by 2030. Just to give you an idea of how this market is growing, in 2021, there are only 19 models available. In 2022, we're already up to 33 models available. And more options has kind of increased interest in EVs in general. We've seen that with the F-150 Lightning, the Maverick, and the Jeep Wrangler.
it's kind of been able to appeal to a different crowd than the original EVs have. And this has meant that more EVs on the road means that there's more charging necessity. Public and workspace chargers are going to need to increase to 27% annually to keep up with that demand. And the need for public chargers in low-income areas is especially something to focus on because a lot of people can't really afford to have their own charger at their home, or they're in a situation where they might be in an apartment or don't have a garage for their own, for themselves. So it just makes it kind of difficult to have an EV charger of their own. So public chargers are going to be much needed in the future. So the planning goals for this study were to identify optimal publicly owned locations, and the township supplied a list of locations. It was our job to assess the location and determine if these are viable sites. We performed a utility survey to get an understanding of the capacity for installing EVSE units. We were to review chargers and installation services and see what other communities in the area are doing that are similar in size and demographic to Canton, and also provide information regarding safety and accessibility, as well as sustainability considerations. So as part of the benchmarking process for the communities, sorry, this is a little small, the questions that were asked as part of an email survey are, is the municipality involved in providing public EV infrastructure? How many chargers and what type of locations? What models and installation services were used? Did the installers provide turnkey services? Is the municipality future ready? And do you have plans to expand? And is there any other information? The results of the study were Ann Arbor has about 85 public charging stations available, 34 of which are owned and operated by the city. They are located at City Hall, police and fire stations, and parking garages, and they're working with the Downtown Development Authority to expand. They hired a contracted electrician with a charging as a service model and are using ChargePoint chargers. In Auburn Hills, there are 22 public charging stations, 5 of which are owned by the city. They're also located at City Hall and in surface and parking garages. And they have no plans for expansion as of yet, but they did contract an electrician with the charging as a service model, and they're also using ChargePoint chargers. Plymouth only has one public charging station, and it's not owned by the city, and they are considering implementing, but have no specific plans as of the beginning of this year. In Northville, there were 6 public charging stations, but the city is looking to add 10, and they're looking to put them in the downtown shopping district as well as parking garages. They're using a Ready Charging contract with NLX charging stations. Novi has 21 public charging stations, 2 of which are owned by the city, and they are located at the library. They have no plan for expansion right now. However, green initiatives are going to be addressed in a steering committee in the future. And Westland had 1, but they are looking to implement 7 charging stations at City Hall as well as a park, and they have plans to expand in a phase 2 of their implementation, and they're using Green Spot with BTC power chargers. And ChargePoint is by far the largest network in Southeast Michigan, from what I've been able to gather.
Jenny, is DC, the column that says DC, is that the level 3 chargers?
Those are, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So for the Canton study, we found that there are 3 publicly available charging stations at IKEA. The township currently does not own any, but we are preparing to add fleet charging for the police. And the locations that were identified for the study are the Village Theater at Cherry Hill, Independence Park, the Canton Sports Center, Summit on the Park, Heritage Park, Pheasant Run and Fellows Creek Golf Clubs, the Administration Building, and the Public Library. The points of interest include retail, food, parks, and enrichment areas, and the walkability was determined by what's within a half a mile of each one of these locations. So starting with the parks, Independence Park has soccer fields, playground, and walking path available. It's densely residential and isn't really close by to many points of interest. It might be a seasonal location, so this might not be the best for the first round of implementation, so we don't recommend adding any at this time. At Heritage Park, there are playing fields, playground and splash pad, amphitheater, a lot of attractions for the community, and it's walkable to several other points of interest. And the capacity is available, but we don't quite know the extent of it because there's not a meter right now. So that will need to be addressed in the future, but we're hoping to be able to add 12 at that location. For the golf clubs, the activity is golf. Pheasant Run is walkable to several year-round points of interest in residences. So that's really its difference between Fellows Creek, because that one is more isolated. You can't really safely walk to any other points of interest, and there aren't many neighborhoods that are close by. So really, that would be more seasonal and limited to just when people play golf. Whereas Pheasant Run is close by other things that have year-round interests. So we're hoping to be able to have 4 to 5 charging stations at the Pheasant Run Golf Club, but the capacity is not currently available. That one would need upgrades in order to put them there. For the Village Theater, it's walkable to year-round points of interest, and it's got its own interests with its performances in visual arts and education that it provides. It's densely residential. It's very close by to a bunch of apartment complexes, so that would be really helpful for them. There are 2 options for placement of chargers in this area. One is close by to the Village Theater on that road. There's plenty of capacity at the building in order to provide 2 charging stations. However, it might be more expensive to get power to them just based on the distance between the building and the parking spaces. There is another option on the other side of the road by the Cherry Hill School. We didn't perform a utility survey there, but so wherever might be best to put the charging stations would be determined on where the power is coming from in that location.
If I remember, in that location, that was metered, and there was a lot of capacity coming out of that building.
So for the Canton Sports Center, there are a lot of both indoor and outdoor fields and courts that draw a lot of interest for a lengthy amount of time. So we do think that that would be a good place to put 6 charging stations just because of the length of time. Summit on the Park also has a lot of activities for people of a lot of different age groups, and it's just a lot of different options. It's also close to many other points of interest for people who aren't interested in doing whatever at the Summit in the Park. It's also semi-residential, so that might be helpful for them. And we do recommend adding 7 at that location. The public library offers a lot of events and groups and children's programs, so and it's also walkable to other points of interest and neighborhoods. So we recommend adding 6 at that location. And then the administration building is home to many public services and a lot of different employees. It's also walkable to many other points of interest in neighborhoods, and it serves as an example for the rest of the community. So we do recommend adding charging stations at this location as well.
And the library is not under your jurisdiction, correct? But we talked to them, and they would obviously be interested in supporting it.
So this infographic just shows the capacity versus the phasing. You'll notice that Heritage Park requires metering to determine capacity, so that one is not available. Pheasant Run is a good location, but requires upgrades, so that's currently at 0. And not on here is the Cherry Hill School, or the Schoolhouse Road possibility, because it requires a utility survey. But the light green shows the capacity, the dark blue shows Phase 1, teal shows Phase 2, and the dark green will show Phase 3. So potential future locations in the next 5 to 10 years might include public schools, particularly high schools. This could encourage EV ownership and driver's ed opportunities to teach students the difference between the experiences of driving an EV versus an ICE vehicle. Parks might be another thing to look at in the future, especially in low-income areas. Independence Park might in the future be a good option. Barchester Park and Floden Park were also potential locations. And then local businesses might be something to explore too. Myers has been known to add charging stations in their parking lots, and it might be worth taking the time to speak to someone there about getting that going with them. The Newtown Center retail shopping center is owned by Acadia Realty Trust, and they're a certified green business, so they might also be interested in pursuing this. For accessibility and sustainability, safety-wise, you want to try not to create unsafe situations and make sure chargers aren't behind bushes or tucked away in dark corners. You'll want to try to avoid people being too far from a sidewalk or in order to avoid accidents. Charger models should be ADA accessible so that all drivers can use them. And it's optimal to try to choose a model with good cord management to avoid tripping hazards, and plus it kind of looks bad if you think about the free air that's at a lot of gas stations. That cord is never put back nicely, so that's kind of would be the same situation with one of these type of chargers. For sustainability, it might be worth trying to use grants and rebates instead of township money in order to avoid upsetting community members who might not be as supportive of this movement. And try to approach it, construction from the most economical and low impact way possible. And this is to install conduits for future phasing, along with the first installation, just to try to avoid disturbing the area more than one time. You'll want to be able to choose Energy Star rated equipment for efficiency, and if possible, use renewable energy sources whenever you can. So for installation services, there are 2 different options for turnkey services. The benefits of a no-cost service are that they're completely free and they just require you to be a site host. They'll end up sharing a small percentage of the profits with the township. It's usually between 5 and 10%. And they'll do all the maintenance and service and upgrades that are required of the station. It's really just the township's responsibility to keep the area safe and clear. The downside is that if they decide that the location isn't profitable for their business, they can choose not to renew the contract later on. And I had noticed that the chargers that were available, a lot of them have that like hose-style charging station. The benefits of using a paid service are that you get to choose the charger model that you use, and you keep 100% of the profits. The downside is that upgrades are going to be on the township, so obsolete technology will be your responsibility to take care of. Maintenance contracts and network contracts are going to be an ongoing cost, and the upfront cost includes the installation service as well as the unit itself. So there's a little bit of a difference in approach here. So this is kind of a snapshot of some of the options that we reviewed. The red dots are kind of the avoid, and the green dots are the good ones. If you were looking to use a paid service, Windemuller is an installation service that lets you choose your model. They don't have any particular model that they're married to or anything. And they offer 24/7 customer support with 1-year maintenance contract. And ChargePoint chargers are widely used and trusted, and their EVSE units are Energy Star rated and ADA compliant. For the no-cost model, GreenSpot uses local electricians at no cost. They take full responsibility of the units, and they provide upgrades. They offer 24/7 support to customers. And they also prepare outreach materials for the community, so I thought that was an interesting thing that they do. They're not exclusive to one brand, but they do typically use BTC power, which, as you can see, has that wrap style. EVgo and Electrify America are actually both two no-cost options that do fast chargers, if that's something that the township would be interested in pursuing. We didn't spend a lot of time reviewing fast chargers, so that would be something that you'd have to look into, but they are both no-cost options, so might be worth doing, just because they do have better charging stations with the retractable cables and everything like that. So, yeah, I think that's all I've got.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. So that was a pretty, high-level overview of the study that was sent out. I do want to just touch on one quick thing, and it goes back to here we talk about the future. One of the things that's actually listed on here is working with local businesses, and I've actually already talked to Amy Hamilton, who oversees the DDA, and we talked about possibly working with the DDA in supplying grants to businesses, and it's very common for DDAs to do those types of grants, whether it's facade improvement or other type of improvements within the district. So this is something that she's open to and would obviously take back to the DDA board. But that is something we did talk about in regards to expanding, not our network, but the network down Ford Road to businesses and private entities. So is there any questions for Jenny?
Just to let you know, we do have our SEMCOG representative here.
Yes, I introduced her.
Okay.
Do you have anything to
I didn't
add?
know.
Hesha?
Did you want to add anything?
Thank you so much for having me. And just wanted to say that Canton Township is one of the first communities in the Southeast Michigan region that developed a EV study plan. So I think this will position you very well for the upcoming funding, whether it's at federal level or other state level funding, to actually go about implementation and installing the chargers at the identified site. So, yeah.
Thank you.
It's actually a perfect segue because I think the next thing, if there's not any questions for Mannequin Smith or Baheshta, is to actually talk about the board priorities and what is the next step so that we can get back to work and work with someone on implementation as far as like locations to put the chargers in. I mean, there's lots of recommendations here, but what is the board's priority for the top locations? And then obviously the study did surround itself around level 2s. I know John has been working with, we've been looking at construction costs. So if there is an increase in power that's needed, we have estimates on that. And then obviously some estimates on construction as well to get the conduit run and get the power run to where we actually want the chargers. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but some of that is going to be relied on. We need to rely on what the wish of the board is as regards to location.
And just to let everybody know, we did speak to MDOT this week. We were going over the Ford Road Boulevard project, and we did bring up about the chargers along Ford Road, making sure there's enough power there, and they said we would have to work directly with DTE probably to make sure. They said they told them our wishes, but we're going to have to sit down with them and really go over that. And some of these items also in here, you had said like Pheasant Run, 0. Is it because you don't know what power is available there, or because that area belongs to us?
Yes, Pheasant Run, so that one would need an upgrade. The power is not currently available to support EVSE units right now.
Nice, okay.
Do you want to touch on that, John?
Yeah. So Jenny's correct. The capacity would be the issue over at Pheasant Run. It's not due to unknowing circumstances. We do know that it's tapped out capacity-wise. We do have tentative options and suggestions for that location as far as adding a transformer feed to house these EV potentials. So that was something that we're in phase 2 looking at. We do have some ideas of what that would cost, and it's possible we can do that there, and I think that's a good option to have. We just have to be prepared to take on additional costs for adding that power to it versus somewhere like the Summit, which had ample opportunity to just tap in and run conduit and take away a lot of the costs. So we're prepared either way for that. But yeah, that pretty much sums it up for Pheasant Run.
Thank you. I thought AAA also had chargers. Did they remove them?
I think they removed them.
Oh, they don't work? They're just sitting there?
They had a while ago a charge point, 2 level 2s, and then there was also a level 3. I don't know if it was charge point, but the last time I went by there, they had replaced the charge points with Blink, and they were out of service. And that was maybe 6 months ago.
Okay. Anyone have any questions or comments?
You know, one thing, bringing that up, I wonder why they, if we decided to go with the company and we didn't like them or whatever, does that then become a problem where you have chargers that aren't working?
I think
So
that's one
that-
of the benefits of going with a more trusted service like
Uh-huh.
ChargePoint.
Right.
A lot of places use ChargePoint just because it's
Sure.
one of the bigger networks,
Yeah.
and they make sure that their services are up and running.
Okay.
They are the most
Yeah, I
expensive
wouldn't-
usually.
I wouldn't recommend Blink.
Yeah.
Okay.
She wouldn't recommend Blink.
Just ballpark figure, how much, I have no clue, how much for one ChargePoint charger?
I
Ballpark.
want to say it's between $7,000 and $8,000, but that was one estimate that I was
Sure,
given, so.
Ballpark.
They were kind of being a little,
Close to the vest.
yeah.
Okay.
Do we have any idea how much foot traffic or how much, like, people go in and out of these situations and making a decision? Like, Village Theater seems to be like it looks like you can do a lot there, but at the same time, Summit on the Park seems to currently have, I would say, more people coming in and out of it, or Heritage Park, and we don't know the capacity there.
Micro.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, sorry. So I was just wondering about, how much foot traffic or people going in and out, if we have an estimate of that, because, looking at this graph here, it looks like, Village Theater might be the place to be, but at the same time, I'm living in this community for the past many years. We know that, Summit has more people going in and out, or Heritage Park is surrounded by more communities, but we are also looking at what are we planning to do in the future. So I'm just thinking from now versus in the future, do we have any idea of the foot traffic in this area?
Yeah,
or-
we didn't actually do traffic counts at the locations, but just to clarify the graphic a little bit, the light green, that's the capacity limit for each of those locations. That's not the recommendation for actually
I know the
installing.
phase 1, phase 2, phase.
So, Village Theater, the recommendation is only a total of 3, where the Summit is a recommendation
But we
of,
don't know what is the capacity at Heritage Park where we are recommending the most based on this. What is, when you say
Pardon,
not
done by
applicable, we don't know?
By size.
It was done by
It was done
parking.
by parking.
It was
counts.
judged more or less by 5%
Okay,
of total
so
parking available.
When you say not applicable, that means we don't know the capacity?
It was just that we don't know the capacity of
Okay.
that one, yep.
The electrical capacity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
and that is something that we're actively working on now. And that is actually the location where we had, if you guys remember back in June, when we had the power go out and we upgraded the power at the time, knowing that this study was being done and that we probably would have EVs in the future. So we did already increase the power at Heritage Park due to an emergency circumstance. So that worked out in our favor, but again, we have to do some further investigation there.
Just wanted to say that SEMCOG, and I am happy to facilitate the discussion between Canton Township and DTE folks. So yeah, feel free to let me know about that. Yeah, I can definitely connect you.
I mean, if I were to look at this list of locations, to me, Village Theater makes the most sense. Just because you could go there, charge your car, walk around, do things while you were charging your car, while you were boosting your battery. I think, additionally, Heritage Park and the Summit, just because there's so many people, it's so central to the community. And also the Canton Sports Center, maybe, I don't know, because people are there for a long period of time. I don't know, that's just what's on the top of my head right now.
Seasonal.
Yeah.
So I agree, except for I don't agree about Village Theater. But I do think we need to look at places where people will be, more people will be coming to and staying for a longer amount of time. I like the idea of somewhere Heritage Park or the Summit, and also I think that the Sports Center is a good idea because of the easy access from Michigan Avenue. That being said, I'm wondering, I'm wondering if we need to sort of define our purpose, and are we trying to provide this as a service to residents? Are we trying to just provide it as a service to, make sure the infrastructure is in place for the eventualities that are going to happen? Because I think there's different reasons for putting chargers in different places, and one of them might be, if we're trying to provide service to residents that wouldn't be able to have them at their own homes, then that would be maybe a different discussion about where we would put them. I'm also wondering if we have any data on, can we get any data from the Secretary of State about registered EV owners in Canton? And if we can get that, can we also get information about where they are?
Yeah, SEMCOG has provided some data about, as of 2020, there was little under 800 electric vehicles registered in Canton. That's 2020.
That's going to be a lot higher now.
It's going to be, the number is certainly
Yeah.
going up, yes.
So there's 800 right now, SEMCOG.
Yeah, like 779.
As of 2 years ago.
That was 2020. 2020.
Yeah, we have the 2022 data now, so I'm happy to share that with you as well.
Great.
Kate, to your point, I think I envision it as being something that people can do when they come to Canton. I would suspect that most of the people in Canton that have an electrical vehicle have electrical vehicle charger at their home.
I think I would agree with that,
Yeah.
but I think there's also, as we try to change over from an ICE vehicle to EVs and encourage that in the general population, there are people that won't be able to do that, and so
Yeah,
that's why I brought it up.
Yeah, I think, and that's important for prioritization and like where we want to start and like how we
Right.
want to expand. But that's, I think, one of the reasons that I thought like Village Theater, because it might be people maybe not necessarily from Canton coming into Canton or coming to Cherry Hill Village or the Canton Sports Center. Yeah, people.
The sports
yeah.
center, I would agree
Yeah.
with. The Village Theater's not that big. I don't have a good,
For me, Village Theater is shorthand for Cherry Hill Village, right? So in that area,
Right.
but yeah.
but I guess to me, I just don't have a good idea of how much of a draw it is, I guess, to say.
Well, having charging stations themselves is kind of a draw to the area. If you have people passing through, even just on their way somewhere else, there's a lot of apps that they can see where charging stations are.
I know. I own it. I'm on my second EV.
That's great.
And so it's been frustrating in Canton because we don't have
Right.
charging stations.
So it
That
might
being
be-
said, I'm pushing for level 3s because I think they're going to be,
That would be
Just-
even more of a draw
right,
to people from
outside.
from outside of the area, for sure.
exactly.
You know, one thing about, I know with Village Theater is there are a lot of apartment complexes around
Right,
that
and that's
area.
what I
And
was
so,
wondering about.
You know, I would like to see, and I mean, we don't have to do it all at once, but we need to plan for the future. So I do think, you know, besides drawing people as it changes,
Marketing, yeah.
making sure we have
Right,
charging
right.
stations for folks. And I would like to see it in the admin building for staff, and then even
Yeah.
after hours, because a lot of people, you know, use our parking structures.
And I think, you know, in the case of the admin building, just speaking as an owner myself, that I think would be okay for a level 2 because you can charge while you're working, and most people aren't going to be here for an hour. They're, you know,
Stephen?
Were you done? Sorry. Okay. No, it's fine. So, great presentation. Thank you. I appreciate talking about this topic tonight. Can you remind me, Anne-Marie and Jade, is there a plan for the township's vehicles and charging? And will these piggyback off each other somehow?
Yeah, I can touch on that real quick. I want to go back to the admin building real quick, though, before I lose my train of thought. So we haven't brought it before you yet because we're still working through some of the finances with Anne Marie and Diane and Michael in regards to paving. But the parking lot, admin parking lot project has been bid out, and we've received those quotes. The 6 charging stations for the admin building are all included in that project. So the conduit, the power, everything is accounted for in that project. So that could actually take care of itself. And I believe there was 1 or 2 level 3s for the police patrol cars for the future. So setting us up for the future. So we kind of have a different method to get the admin building done. And then in regards to the future in our fleet, we are in the process of putting together a fleet transition plan to bring back before the board to talk about our transition of our fleet from ICE vehicles to hybrids and EVs, and then what that looks like from infrastructure standpoint and how we're going to make sure that we've got enough power to satisfy our needs as well. And that would be at all the township locations, even Public Works. So we're working on that now. If you weren't aware, we had a transition with our fleet supervisor in the last few months, so we're still working through some transitions there, but we hope to get that done as soon as possible. And John Selmy's here, he's been working on that with Kevin Clark, our new supervisor, on getting that transition plan put together.
So does that include police and fire as
Yes.
well?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
In addition to what Jade said for your question, is, and I know this isn't answered here, but you could actually have, we could partner, if we partner with the company, we could have a dashboard inside the township. So you could take, let's say there's 6 level 2s behind the building. We could say, okay, on Monday through Friday, they're for employees. And then on Tuesday, on the weekends, we switch them over to charged, so you could control how much you charge for a charge, or you can control who uses them. Yeah, so we want to form those partnerships so we have control of that also. So you can put incentives out, so you can say, hey, Monday's free charger day, and also you can do maintenance remotely, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for you folks at Mannequin Smith, so we talked a little bit about these companies that will deploy the chargers, and do they also do their own sites at times, like have a parking lot with chargers in them themselves?
So are you talking about the no-cost options?
I'm talking about us not being involved at all, and them buying land and deploying.
That's what the no-cost option is. You'd basically be a site host. So you could.
You give them access.
Yeah, you just say, this is, free for you guys to do, and then they'll do their own site assessment and take you.
But
from
you have to
beginning
provide the land. They don't purchase land themselves
They
and
don't,
do it?
as far
Okay.
as I
It's not like a gas station model where someone buys land, Exxon will buy land and build a gas station on
As
it.
far as I understand, that's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can actually do revenue sharing too, so if you
Okay,
let them.
yeah, I was just wondering if there was incentive where we're by the highway, right? There's some lots by the highway, especially on the other side of 275, I think, where they could, or an outlot of an existing, like you said, Myers or something like that, where they put in a dozen level 3s or something for the commuters going up and down 275.
I gotta believe your point, that will happen.
Yeah.
Electrify America's planning.
Is there? Because I think, I mean, I've been only tangentially reading, not paying attention or anything about, where people along the highways are going to charge their cars in the future, or the highways potentially someday will charge their cars, but yeah.
Well, the governor released a statement about a month ago showing that between along 275, between 696 and 75, there's going to be these level 3 chargers right off the highway, and there's 13 possible exits.
So the government is putting them in?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yeah.
It's just a little confusing to me, like what our role should be in terms of, I mean, we didn't put any gas stations in Canton. We approved them putting it in, but we didn't build gas stations. So, I want these things to happen, but it seems like they should sort of go where the gas stations are. I mean, that seems to be the most convenient places for people to refuel their cars, whatever the fuel is. So that's why I'm saying we're doing all these things in this side of town and in the parks and things, but it doesn't, it may attract some people, but it doesn't, it's not like easy on, easy off type
Difference
access.
is the nature of EVs versus an ICE vehicle is that it does take time, so you'll want to try to put them in places that people are willing and able to spend time
Yeah.
and want to spend money.
You don't
or
want to sit
whatever.
at a gas station for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends what you made a gas station these days, an electrical charging.
So-
Michael, you had a
Yeah.
comment on that?
I like that somebody brought up kind of what's our vision and what is the purpose. Because, yeah, I mean, the philosophical debate about kind of where, what, and why, and how, that's an important one. You could say we don't subsidize combustible engines, but that would be a lie, right? The entire Act 51, we use lots of public dollar. I mean, there's a reason Henry Ford sat on the Wayne County Road Commission, where they invented concrete and they invented asphalt. He duped the public, the taxpayers, to pay to put in roads. Plain and simple. And the other commissioner was Haggerty. The road's named after him. He made bricks, and they laid bricks for roads. Those men made a lot of money getting the public to pay to put in roads so that those cars could drive. So I think the idea that we're going to be able to actively make the transition to electric vehicles without having the public sector involved does feel relatively Pollyannish, and it doesn't feel consistent with kind of how we've done infrastructure in the first place. Fuel, yeah, but I think, I mean, talking about like electricity versus gasoline as two completely different types of fuel, that makes sense to me. So when I think about this, I think about if 54% of all vehicle trips are 4 miles, so well over half of all vehicle travel is 4 miles. And an hour on a level 2 gets you between 18 and 28 miles. It's pretty darn good. If I'm driving to the Canton Public Library so that I can do story time with my son, and unfortunately I didn't plug my car in, and I get there, and we're there for an hour, and I've traveled 4 miles to the library, I earn 18 miles on a bad day, maybe 28 miles on a good day. And then I leave, and maybe I go to Ford Road, and luckily the DDA has put in some level 2 chargers over at Target. And I meet my wife there, and we spend an hour walking around. Well, now I've just added 36 miles, and I've traveled 8 miles. So if we have vehicle chargers throughout the community, it's very easy to piecemeal and patch together a substantial amount of travel. The average commute to work in the United States of America is 41 miles. 41 miles. So maybe we think at the township, our primary goal is to charge our fleet and to provide a benefit for employees who might be traveling 41 miles. Maybe we want to have some level 2s, some level 3s. Maybe we want to pay for that energy. Maybe if we put them in our parks, where people might be playing for an hour with their kids or a half hour, we put in level 2s and we require people to pay for that energy there. I don't know. I've not thought about this. This is just me spitballing based on information I can find on Google. But based on what does the future look like? Should we be engaging other governmental and non-governmental partners out there, the library? Should we be sharing the cost of putting in this infrastructure? Maybe. Does that make sense to have an integrated system? Probably. Should we be using our property to do it? I think so. Should the DDA be doing it as an economic incentive? Because I got to be honest, if I'm an electric vehicle owner and I know that Ford Road is full of vehicle chargers, but there's like 2 in Plymouth or like 3 in Livonia because they're not all in on this stuff, that's really good business. That's really good for business, for any business located on Ford Road. So there's a lot to consider here if you're going to talk about kind of the value. What is the value to the community? Because I would argue that, like, from a philosophical standpoint, the value to the community is that we're going to try to remain relevant to the 98,000 people who live in Canton Township who are going to be making the migration to electric vehicles. We shouldn't be the sole source of power, but we should create a network that allows them to engage the community, engage events, the library, shopping, retail, public spaces, and be able to use their vehicle accordingly. So I think there's a lot of work to do on that question, but it feels to me like probably should put a vehicle charger in every one of those locations.
Mm-hmm. Kate, you had something?
Not really.
Oh. Tanya?
What Stephen said, that, as the role of the government is, as whenever we go with new technology or anything new, the role of the government is like, any research that starts first within the government. The defense probably does most of the state-of-the-art research because, that's where new technology comes in. NASA does state-of-the-art research. Same way governments here, build an infrastructure for the future technology, like, are we thinking what is the role of the government? Probably when motor vehicles started after horse buggies, was to build the infrastructure, build roads so that vehicles could travel. And as we built our future plan, our goals and plans, we talked about sustainability, and that's one of our goals, board goals. So I think this is a good option to look into opportunities where we can provide the infrastructure as a government to build on. And as the representative from SEMCOG said, we can work with DTE, we can work with having grants if we are the community in Western Wayne or Wayne County to do this. In the beginning, people will come to shop here, to work here, to live here. So,
And Stephen, in addition to why the government is putting on along the highways, what happened is the Volkswagen diesel scandal. Part of that is because of their emission scandals, they owed the federal government, the EPA took them to court, they owed the federal government billions of dollars. Michigan got 64 million of that. So they're using those funds to put these along the highways, and 275 and 94 are included, and so are the coastal parks along.
Do we know if we're getting one?
Well, that's, we spoke to MDOT Monday, and I said, okay, there's 13 exits. Which ones are going in Canton? And she said, we're working on that.
Okay.
So that's still open-ended. And those are going to be the fast chargers, and they'll be close to the highway.
Okay.
Yeah, looks like there's one going in at the BP at Ford and Haggerty. That's on the unplug share.
Unplug share.
As
Good.
coming soon.
One charger or
One.
one level 3?
One level 3, and then the ones at IKEA across the street.
I wonder if, in a world where people, because, how often do people travel more than 400 miles, right, at a given moment. Like, but I wonder if people are going to maybe reserve their combustible engines for long distance travel. Like, they could just be different
yeah.
tools, right? Like if I'm going to go play golf, I'm not going to use a putter on the tee box. That doesn't make any sense, right? But so electric vehicle might be the vehicle I use for like urban, suburban travel for short trips to work, and I might keep a combustible engine and use one of the remaining 6, gas stations in a given area for like driving to Florida or like the UP.
Well, as the range increases, you'll see more and more of that, right? Some of them are at 300 miles right now, but
Yeah.
a couple years ago, they were only at 100.
Right, so, yeah, and then eventually, the technology might result in electric vehicles being great for long-distance travel. I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people who own EVs right now do that. They will use their ICE vehicle for a long-distance drive. But as Anne Marie said, the ranges are getting better and better. So, and if we have fast chargers that we can go and get a chart, if we can go 200 miles and then fast charge for 18 minutes, then
Right.
that would be even better.
We
Yeah,
just
the-
have to figure out how to charge the vehicles while they're running.
They're driving on the road.
We need those roads, right, that charge
Yeah.
while you
Right.
drive over them.
Berkeley.
Well, Detroit has that experiment going on now, and so does M-City and American Center for Mobility. So what do you need from us? I mean, I know that in speaking to some of the mayors that have them, they're saying they're actually, they're charging residents to do this. I don't know what their charges are. What do you see as an average charge? Is it $1 an hour, or what are you seeing?
I don't know. Do you know
I,
what the current
I,
rate is?
I can't remember. I don't think it was even $1, to be honest.
Okay.
But I can't say.
It's usually per minute, isn't it?
What was that?
Isn't it usually per minute?
So then you need from us.
That's something we can definitely look into and see what the average is. And I think I don't know, it might change, it might depend on the charger you go with too.
Right.
Maybe a different supplier charges something different, and especially if you have the cost share method. So.
From personal experience, I can say we don't want to own the chargers.
Yeah, I heard your story before.
Yeah. So Ford used to own General Electric chargers, and then General Electric decided they were out of the business, and you're stuck with maintaining all this is yours now, and you've got to fix it.
Well, I think there tends to be some issues with vandalism too, so
Yes.
people go and cut the charger cords.
And that's one of the visibility and safety things, is make sure that it's in a very visible, very well-lit location within sight of doors. Make sure it's not tucked back away so that can't happen as often.
Cameras, maybe, too.
Blink charges between 4 and 6 cents per minute.
4 to 6 cents per minute?
I got off
I'm sorry, did you say
couple
46
bucks.
cents or
with 4 to 6.
4 to
cents
6.
Per minute.
cents per minute?
That's like
39 to 79 per.
$3 an hour.
And some of the revenue sharing that you're seeing with the cities, are they 10% or?
Between, I think, 5 and 10%, it was the cost sharing for those. It just depends on whatever contract agreement you end up with the site host or the provider.
There's some details in the back of the report that Jenny put together that goes through. I know we have the table in the presentation, but you did a good job putting all of those, the different chargers and the options that come along with those, and some of the information is in that packet as well.
So what do you need from us next, or that we're just waiting for more information, or?
I guess we kind of need to know the priority of where we want to start this. And then we have a contractor that's on board to help with the implementation, to actually drill down into the power and the design and getting the conduit and the construction to those locations. And then letting me know that's probably the first and foremost. And then two, if we do not want to own them, then we can start looking at and going out to bid. I'm assuming bid would be the best process to go out and bid on the right charger.
Is anyone objection to having them look at all of them that they've recommended? And just give us a breakdown then, and we can decide what we want to eliminate or add at that point?
I apologize for being late. How much does a level 2 vehicle charger cost, did we say? Like 8,000 bucks?
One estimate was $7,000 to $8,000. They were
Feels
kind
right.
of, yeah.
I know nothing about it, but that just feels.
There's also incentives and cost sharing too that they'll offer you.
Oh, yeah, $8,000 doesn't scare me. Right, when it comes to like putting in infrastructure. And I assume that's just the
if you
cost.
want to purchase the unit. The no-cost options, you don't owe anything.
You just get a small percent.
Yeah.
The company still owns the charger.
But you gotta
Yeah,
find.
and then they maintain
Yeah.
it too.
When we look at other municipalities, did they own? Like, so Westland's putting in those 6 chargers
Wanna
at
go back
that
to that
Totten
slide?
Park.
Yeah,
on
they,
Ford Road?
I don't believe that they own them. I think, Jenny, didn't you say they're mostly the charge point?
Slide.
Let's see here.
Looks like Westland's gone with Green Spot.
Westland and Northville were both using the no-cost option. The rest of them that did have chargers were using ChargePoint chargers, except for Novi. Theirs are very old. I think they installed them in 2011, and they just kind of lost interest. I don't know.
If we're looking at long-term
we can get them
sustainability of
cheap.
infrastructure, it looks like we've got to bite the bullet and go with ChargePoint. It just feels that way.
They've got some, yeah, there's a lot to ChargePoint, so.
A lot.
A lot of them, they're more expensive usually. They've got a lot of, they raise their prices rapidly. So yeah, I think
On the infrastructure,
on the chargers themselves. It's proprietary software, and they have their own standardized software. They don't have a common platform, so that's where they kind of control you too. They get you by the,
So you'd have to have like a ChargePoint app specifically instead of some of the other open
Yeah.
networks have.
so there's
Oh,
plus,
sharing.
yeah,
Which one are you talking about?
ChargePoint.
that's the one that's like, got 50% of the market share in Southeast Michigan?
It's one of the most used,
Yeah,
yes.
they buy up a lot of smaller companies too.
So why are they 50% of the market?
They buy up smaller companies, and that's a big part of it. They convince people.
They provide home chargers also.
Yes. That's included also.
So like I have the ChargePoint app because I have a ChargePoint charger in my garage, so
Now,
I can
John,
control it.
You also went with, you installed them in Detroit, and you guys went with another company. What was that?
Yeah, we used Flash Parking. They were just getting into the business. Flash Parking did a lot of event parking, CCIO parking, and they started getting into the EV, and they were at no cost. We didn't have much in Detroit, and that was probably 3 or 4 years ago when we did that. I know we're really starting to expand into it, but they were a no-cost option. They serviced, installed all the equipment, they maintained the software, they updated the software, and we got, I think it was a 10% split with them. We were just the hosts, and they took care of everything else. So there was a no cost to the township.
So there's a lot of details to the different contracts that will give us some really good options and to help us decide where to go also.
And I'll defer to my colleagues too, but I still think the best way to do it is if we decided to go with the no-cost option is to go out to the market and bid it out. And say we're looking for a 5-year contract with, I just read I think phase 1, if we did every charger, that's 10 chargers throughout the township, not counting the 6 that would be here, so we'd probably have 5 more. But we could put the number of chargers, the number of locations, and then kind of set our terms in our RFP, and then have those bids come back and see where they land.
And so we lay the infrastructure, and the company comes in and plugs in their devices, and then in 5 years, if we don't want to go with them, or 3 years or whatever, they can just be ripped out and new ones be put in.
Because you still have the power to the location, yep.
And Fire Station 1 as well, or Fire Station 2 as well is ready.
All right.
Oh,
That's one
yes,
has
that
the-
one's ready, yep.
And your only cost is like the cost of the charger, which is like, as we said, like $8,000.
You wouldn't have a cost to the
It's
charger.
like one light bulb at like the baseball field.
Right.
Depending on what option you're going.
Right.
You may not have that
You
cost.
might not have that at all.
Right. We could just have them own it, and we just,
Your biggest expense is going to be if we have to increase power. And I think that's our next step. And that's where you're going to really run into a large cost, which is going to be about $60,000 to upgrade power at a particular location. And then you're going to have the construction, which is to actually lay the conduit and run the power from the main source to wherever the locations are going to be that you have the chargers located. And I think we've estimated that around $25,000 on average, depending on how the run and how far we have to get from the power to where the chargers are. But that's part of that next phase, that implementation is, okay, we've got the recommendations now. Let's really drill down specifically by location to say where's our shortest run and what's the least amount of cost.
So I have a question. So like if we've got existing CIP projects that are going to involve a substantial amount of pavement at some of these places, does it make sense, even if it's not like the most ideal spot to put a charger, if you're ripping it up and you're going to, to just throw down some conduit and run some line, at that point, it sounds like it's substantially cheaper, like to do like Canton Sports Center.
That's our, so Sports Center, admin building, I don't know that they did any in Heritage Park because I don't think they went down that far.
Not yet.
Out by the softball fields. But that's standard in all of our parking lots now is to run conduit.
Okay.
Yep.
It's approximately
But we got to run the
$10.
wire inside the conduit.
Say it again. Well, you can run that.
You just
Once the
pull it.
power, then you can run it. The conduit's that's the hard part.
Yeah, conduit's approximately $10 a linear foot, depending on how far you run it. That dictates your cost.
Can we go back to that sheet where we had all the
This one?
yeah,
Okay.
recommendations? So based on this, I feel that, Canton Sports Center, Summit on the Park, and the Township, the admin building, I know public library is not ours, right? It's
Do we manage their parking lot?
No.
No.
They just wanted to be part of the study.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Seems
I
like-
thought they were part of the study when we first started.
Yeah. So then we just
Found
kind
out
of.
They would do well, though, I mean, so,
yeah.
You
So
share with
maybe
Eva,
yeah.
be like, hey, we're jumping, you want to jump with?
But if we have one, if we had something at the admin building, people coming to the library could use it based on the proximity, I'm just talking. So maybe start with like 3 or 4 of these rather than the entire list. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that we try to pare it down to like 3 to 5
Yeah.
But if we are doing construction.
locations, but.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we want to size the transformers for the maximum that we can.
For the color coding, does phase 1 mean a phase 1 charger, which is something I'm not aware of, or is phase 1 like if you had
One would be
a multi-phase?
it's a slow growth. So you want to put in conduits to get the entire, all the way through phase 3. But phase 1 would just be like putting in one charger to see how it does, see if it's a good location.
So why don't we just do phase 1?
Yep.
Just call it a day.
That would be, if you don't count the library, that's 15 chargers. That does include the admin, that includes the admin building though, which,
It's a little pricey, but that's not,
But, I mean,
again, we're
some-
spending about
ten.
$3 million down at the Canton Sports Center.
well, some of these places already have, I mean, we're okay with
I do too.
Without
There are
electrical,
10
right?
of them.
Public
phase
library, that'd be
1, right?
9.
Amazon just put in a big, they have electric vehicle shuttles, they just pulled some heavy power there because they found out it wasn't adequate. So, I don't know if we can pull off.
I see, 10 dark blue ones, are there more?
yeah, I'm sorry, I said 15 because of the admin building. I'm counting all 6 of those, but we could just go with phase 1 and at the admin building too. Because we're going to have all the conduit and the power pulled for the admin building if that project moves forward.
It looks like-
That's another study session.
And the number, like, so NA and 0 means that there's no existing or an unknown.
There's no meter.
Electrical
No.
capacity?
Doesn't doesn't currently have the capacity to service these stations,
They
but
have that.
it will need to be upgraded. Heritage Park should be able to
It
handle
will.
it based on
Heritage Park.
the upgrades that have been available. It just needs metering to determine just how many.
How much of the load is being used?
Yep. So,
Well,
yeah, and that happened not too long ago because of the emergency fix. So Heritage Park should be all set to go. The Pheasant Run would have to be upgraded, and that's when I mentioned the $60,000 mark amount, that would be the upgrade cost average.
So I'll propose this, that we do phase 1 minus Pheasant Run at the moment. Just, I think that people, who go to Pheasant Run could also charge at
Summit.
Heritage Park or at the Summit. It's not that far.
Try carrying your.
We didn't
Clubs
do Pheasant
off.
Run, they're not a part of the CIP, right? That parking lot? Is the parking lot in good shape, or is the parking lot in
I
bad
think
shape?
it's just cart
It's,
path.
It's not in good shape.
What's that?
It's not in good shape. It's a little bit better than what we have back, it's not, it's a little bit worse than what we have back here. But the-
So in a couple of years, we
Yeah.
might be looking at doing something out there.
I have a feeling that I remember reading something about Pheasant Run as in like 2024. So I just want to make sure that I go back and verify the document, and then I can let you know.
Might be something they have to go for that.
I think so, yeah.
So just to clarify for phase one, if we're doing the 10, we would discount the library and add fire station 2.
Well, you might want to ask them if the library wants to join us.
Okay.
Eva might want to.
Yeah, that's there.
Yeah.
Fire stations 2 shouldn't be on here as well, just because it's already there.
Correct, because
If-
that's already,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
electrical's already there.
Correct.
right?
So that'd be an additional one,
Mhm.
just so we're clear. I just want-
So switch Pheasant Run to Fire Station 2.
Hmm?
And for like, so for the admin building, those would be, if we're doing this at no cost, that would be the forward-facing charger then, I assume? Or would that be a charger in the back for employees?
You could use it for either,
It was both. In the design of the admin parking lot, I can't remember where, I know you guys, because Manikin Smith did the design for the admin parking lot too. There were some that were outside the gated area where employees park for the public to use any time of day, but then inside the gated area, there was also some. And then at 4:30, the plan is that those gates open up to a certain portion of those gates would open up, and the public could use those at that point as well. So we covered both areas with that.
I have a quick comment. Actually, sort of going back to the conversation that was going on before about how public are going to use these. If you need to, or if you would like to prioritize between these identified locations, I think a public input session would be helpful and help you prioritize where do you want to go next. I mean, first, actually, like where do you invest first? And I think, yeah, public input would be very valuable.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Have you seen that done in regards to EVs in other communities?
Actually, the Tri-County study which is going on right now, they are holding public input sessions on where people would like to see charging infrastructure.
Are they-
And the comments that we got is like schools or parks, park and recreation, community centers, which I see some of those listed here too. But yeah, again, like as a component to the study, a public input session would be very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. You could put a study on the focus for, EV that goes to everybody's home, say, please let us know. So we're estimating, when the 800 EV owners in Canton see that, they'll jump on it and fill it out.
That was 2020. It's going to be
Yeah.
more.
Oh, that's true, the thousands now, yeah.
Yeah, it will be interesting to get that data.
I
Up
wouldn't
to
shy
date.
away from like engaging the DDA on this and letting them know that we're kind of making this jump and seeing if they want to,
Yeah,
Think
that
about it,
meeting's
too.
tomorrow, so.
Yeah, I think Clerk Segrist, you weren't in the room when we talked about it, but we did, the DDA was mentioned in the presentation, and I've talked to Amy Hamilton in regards to doing DDA grants and partnering with the businesses. We talked about this a few months ago, so possibly doing some sort of grants and cost sharing with businesses to encourage them to put in EV chargers up and down the corridor.
So is that, what you need from us then? We'll start with
Yep.
this
So we're going to
survey
start with phase one. Is that what I'm understanding?
And maybe even get a survey going to see if
Yep. Mhm.
if that changes some of the
And
conversation.
in the
that we
meantime, we
had.
can get the bids started to get get that ready while we're doing the survey, and then be ready to jump. Okay?
Okay. Any other questions or comments? No? We do have some people online. Does anyone want to comment or question on this topic? We have 3 people. You can raise your hand. So you just raise your hand because I see you are all have the capability to do that. Any of the attendees want to raise their hand and ask some questions? No? 1, 2, 3? Okay. No questions there. Our panelists, I saw Bill Surchak was on. I don't know if he wanted to make a comment, but he's not on any longer. Okay. All right. Okay, great. Any other public comment in the room? No. John? All right, great. Then can I have a motion? Well, actually, any announcements or anything? No? Nothing? Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Treasurer Slavens. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the great information.